The phone on the front desk rang just after lunch. It was a quiet Tuesday. Papers stacked neatly. Coffee still warm. I reached for the receiver without thinking. "Hello," I said. A pause. Not static. Not silence. Breathing. Slow, steady breathing. Then a voice. Low. Calm. "Is this Anna?" My heart kicked. "Yes." "Who is this?" The breathing got louder. "You don't remember me, do you?" Something about that voice scratched at my memory. Like hearing an old song in a different key. "Should I?" I asked, trying to sound polite. But before the voice could answer, the line clicked dead. I stared at the phone in my hand. "Who was that?" Mark from accounting asked as he passed by. "I don't know," I said. He frowned. "Strange. I didn't hear it ring." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "It rang right here." But his face stayed blank. "No, it didn't." That's when I noticed something else. The caller ID. No number. No private caller. Just a single word in all caps, "return." I set the receiver down slowly, my pulse racing. Because I had seen that word before, 10 years ago, in a place I never thought I'd hear from again. I sat at my desk pretending to type, but my eyes kept sliding toward the phone. The word "return" burned in my head. 10 years ago, that word had been the last thing I saw in a note slipped under my apartment door. Back then, it came after something I didn't want to remember. Something I had buried. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video at 2:13 p.m. The phone rang again. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Nobody else in the office looked up. No one moved. It was like I was the only one who could hear it. Picked it up. "Hello." This time the voice was sharper, almost impatient. "Anna. You're late." My throat tightened. "Late for what?" "For what you owe," the voice said. I gripped the phone harder. "I don't owe you anything." The voice gave a short, dry laugh. "You took something that wasn't yours. We've been patient. But time's up." I opened my mouth to argue, but the line went dead again. I stared at the phone. My hands were shaking. Mark walked past, carrying a stack of papers. "Anna, you look pale. You okay?" I nodded too quickly. "Fine. Just need some air." I stepped outside, the autumn wind biting my face. My thoughts were racing. 10 years ago, I was a broke 23-year-old living in a crumbling apartment. My upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, was a reclusive old woman who rarely spoke. Then one day, she called me into her place to help her lift a heavy box. Inside the box were photographs, letters, and an old silver locket. The letters were strange, full of warnings, names I didn't recognize, and one word that kept appearing in bold, shaky handwriting: "return." 2 days later, Mrs. Caldwell was gone. No goodbye. No trace. Her apartment was cleared out. But the locket somehow ended up in my coat pocket. I didn't tell anyone. I kept it in a drawer for years, never wearing it, never touching it. Until last month when it disappeared. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and called home. 3 rings. 4. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. When I walked back in, the office felt different. Colder. Mark wasn't at his desk. Neither was anyone else. The whole floor was empty. And then I heard it. Not the phone. Not my own heartbeat. But the sound of slow, deliberate breathing coming from the conference room at the end of the hall. The door was open just a crack. "Anna," the voice whispered. I didn't remember walking toward it. I didn't remember pushing the door open. But I'll never forget what I saw inside. The conference room was dark except for a thin strip of light spilling through the blinds, painting the table in pale silver lines. I stepped inside slowly, my footsteps muffled by the carpet. The air felt heavy, like the room hadn't been opened in years. At the far end of the table sat a man I didn't recognize. He was leaning back in a chair, hands folded on his lap, wearing a suit that looked like it belonged to another decade. The collar was frayed. His eyes were sharp though fixed right on me. "You kept it," he said softly. My voice cracked. "Kept what?" "The locket." Every hair on my arm stood up. I don't have it." He tilted his head slightly, studying me like a specimen under glass. "That's not true, Anna. You had it for 10 years. You had plenty of chances to give it back. But you didn't. And now it's gone. I felt my pulse in my throat. I never asked for it. I didn't steal it. You just kept it. He cut in, his tone calm but sharp as a blade. Do you know how many people have suffered because of that choice? I swallowed hard. No. And I don't want to know. He leaned forward. The light caught his face and I realized his eyes were a pale, almost colorless gray. But you need to know. Because now it's your turn. My turn for what? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. To pay the debt. The words hung in the air. I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut before I could touch it. The man didn't move. He just sat there like he knew there was nowhere else for me to go. You think this is about you, he said. It's not. This started long before you were born. Mrs. Caldwell was only a keeper. So was the man before her. And now, because you failed to return it, you've taken her place. My stomach twisted. Taken her place doing what? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and slid something across the table. It stopped right at the edge, inches from my hand. It was the locket. I froze. Where, how? It found its way back, he said simply. It always does. But this time it's bound to you. I'm not keeping it, I said, stepping back. He smiled faintly. It's not about keeping it. It's about carrying it. Wherever you go, it will follow. And so will they. They? I asked. He didn't speak. He just lifted a finger and pointed toward the window. I turned my head. Through the narrow blinds, I saw the street below. People were walking, only they weren't walking like normal people. They moved slowly in perfect unison, all looking up toward the same window. My window. Their faces were pale, their eyes blank. I stumbled backward. Who are they? He stood up now, and even though he wasn't tall, the way he moved made the space between us shrink. They're the ones who have been waiting. And now they're waiting for you. I shook my head. No. I'm not part of this. I'm not. The office lights flickered once. Twice. Then the whole building went dark. The only light left was the silver line from the blinds. And in it, I saw the man's shadow stretch across the table toward me, longer than it should have been, like it wasn't entirely human. Anna, he said, his voice low and final. Your time starts now. Before I could move, he pressed the locket into my palm. It was ice cold, almost painful. And then he was gone. The door swung open on its own, revealing the hallway. But it wasn't my office hallway anymore. It was the narrow, dim corridor of Mrs. Caldwell's old apartment building. The same one I swore I'd never see again. My breath caught in my chest as I stepped into that narrow corridor. The peeling wallpaper curled like dry leaves, and the air was heavy with the smell of damp wood and something older, like the scent of a locked attic no one had opened in decades. The buzzing of a single ceiling bulb filled the silence. I took one step forward. The bulb flickered. Somewhere in the distance, a floorboard groaned, slow and deliberate, as if someone was pacing, waiting. I clutched the cold locket in my palm so tightly my nails dug into my skin. My hand throbbed with each heartbeat. I told myself it wasn't real. That maybe I'd passed out in the office and this was some nightmare. But nightmares don't scrape at the walls. The sound came again, slow, dragging fingernails along the plaster. It moved closer, passing the corners of the hallway like it knew exactly where I stood. I forced my legs forward, my shoes whispering against the warped floorboards. The corridor seemed longer than it had when I was a child, stretching endlessly, doors lining each side like watching eyes. One door stood open at the far end. The light inside was dim, but enough for me to see the shape of a rocking chair. It was moving gently back and forth, though no one sat in it. I stepped inside. The room was small, with a single cracked window that rattled faintly against the wind. A faded rug covered most of the floor, and on it lay a scattering of objects, a child's shoe, a broken porcelain doll, and a bundle of yellowed letters tied with twine. The rocking chair slowed to a stop. I heard the floor behind me groan, but I didn't turn. Instead, I kept my eyes on the letters. My hands shook as I reached for them. The twine snapped easily and the top letter slid free. It was addressed to my mother. I froze. My mother had never mentioned this place. She'd never spoken of Mrs. Caldwell, never told me why she used to walk me past this building without ever going inside. The letter was short. A single line. The debt is not yours yet. Keep her away from here. I felt the air shift behind me, warmer, heavier, like someone was standing inches away. I turned. Mrs. Caldwell was there. Or something wearing her face. Her eyes were darker than I remembered, almost black, and her skin was pale, stretched too tightly across her bones. You weren't supposed to come back, she said, her voice carrying the hiss of wind through cracks. I didn't choose this, I said, backing up. I never wanted the locket. She tilted her head, her smile sharp and wrong. That's what they all say. But the locket doesn't care what you want. It only cares that you carry it. My pulse thundered in my ears. Why me? Why now? Her gaze dropped to the letters in my hand. Because the last keeper broke the chain. Your mother kept you away for years, but she could only hide you for so long. When the locket found you, it claimed you. And now, she stepped closer. You belong here. I shook my head, clutching the letters. I'm not staying. I'm not. The floor shifted under my feet. The walls began to close in, the peeling wallpaper curling tighter, the ceiling lowering. The air turned thick, pressing against my lungs. You think leaving changes anything? Mrs. Caldwell whispered. The locket will follow. It will wait. And one day when you think you're free, it will call you back again. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was anger. But I stepped forward, holding the locket out toward her. Then take it, I said. Her smile faltered. You can't give it away, she said slowly, almost like she was reminding herself. It has to be taken. Then take it, I repeated louder. Her hand twitched toward it, then froze in midair. Her face twisted, a flicker of something, fear, passing through her eyes. And then I understood. She couldn't touch it. The keeper could never pass it on willingly. The locket chose. I looked down at it, the tarnished metal catching the dim light. My reflection stared back at me in its curved surface, small, distorted, but mine. I closed my fingers around it and stepped closer to her. You said it always finds its way back. Maybe it will. But not to me. Before she could move, I threw it out the cracked window. The glass shattered, the sound echoing down the empty corridor. For a moment everything went still. Then Mrs. Caldwell screamed. A sound so sharp it felt like it could split bone. The walls shook, dust falling from the ceiling, and her form began to blur, her edges dissolving like smoke in wind. The corridor stretched and twisted, the doors slamming shut one by one, until there was nothing but darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my office. The window was intact. The hallway outside was the same as it had always been. But the locket was gone. And so was Mrs. Caldwell. Still, every time the office phone rings, I hesitate before answering. Because I know one day it won't be a client or a wrong number. It will be the locket. And it will be calling for me again. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video.